What you are about to hear tonight are 4 methods for releasing the grip of the mind. They come from ancient wisdom, but they require no particular belief. They ask only your willingness to try. Each method builds upon the last, and together they form a practice that can profoundly transform not only your life, but the lives of everyone around you. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. We hold on to so many things. We hold on to words spoken years ago. We hold on to fears about what tomorrow might bring, to regrets about what yesterday took away. We hold on so tightly that our hands ache, our hearts grow weary, and still we cannot seem to open our fingers and let go. We hesitate because we fear that if we drop these burdens, we will be left with nothing. But when you learn to let go, you do not become empty. You become free and filled with a deep, profound peace. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the weight of whatever you are carrying. And know that by the end of this journey, you will understand how to set it down. Let us begin with a strange and uncomfortable truth. Someone hurts you. Perhaps they betray your trust. Perhaps they speak cruelly about you to others. Perhaps they make a promise and break it, leaving you alone when you needed them most. This happens. It is part of being human, this vulnerability to one another. And so you are hurt. Once. But then something curious begins. You think about what happened. You replay the conversation in your mind, hearing their words again. You imagine what you should have said. You feel the sting of it fresh, as if it were happening now, in this moment. And then you do it again. And again. Perhaps you do it while trying to fall asleep. Perhaps you do it while driving to work. Perhaps you do it in the shower, in the quiet moments when the mind is left to wander. Each time you replay it, you feel the pain again. What began as a single wound has become 1,000 wounds. The person who hurt you is perhaps not even thinking about you anymore. They have moved on with their life. But you have not moved on. You have given them permission to keep hurting you day after day for as long as you choose to hold on. When you look at it clearly, this is one of the most unreasonable things a person can do. It defies all logic. And yet, we do it constantly. We all do it. We take a single moment of pain, and we multiply it endlessly through the strange alchemy of the mind. Why? This is the question that opens the door to understanding. Why do we hold on to what hurts us? Why do we carry burdens that serve no purpose? Why, when we could set something down at any moment, do we clutch it tighter instead? The answer is simple, though not easy to accept. We hold on because we do not know how to let go. We have never been taught. We have learned 1,000 skills in our lives. We have learned to read and write, to drive cars and operate computers, to navigate complex social situations and manage our careers. But the skill of releasing, of opening the hand of the mind and allowing things to fall away, this most essential art has been neglected in our education. The good news is that it can be learned. Letting go is not a talent that some people have and others lack. It is not a matter of personality or temperament. It is a skill, as practical and learnable as any other. And once you understand the methods, once you have practiced them and felt their effects, you will wonder how you ever lived without them. before we can learn to let go, we must first understand what we are holding. Imagine for a moment that you could see inside your own mind. Not the thoughts themselves, but the weight of them. Imagine you could see all the things you carry with you through each day, made visible like objects in a room. What would you find there? For most of us, the room would be crowded. There would be old grievances stacked in the corners, gathering dust but never discarded. There would be anxieties about the future, shapeless and heavy, taking up far more space than they deserve. There would be regrets from decades past, still as vivid as the day they were formed. There would be expectations, demands we place on ourselves and others, rigid structures that leave no room for life to unfold naturally. And there, somewhere in the middle of all this clutter, there would be the present moment. Small, cramped, barely visible beneath all the things we have piled on top of it. This is how most people live. They move through their days carrying an enormous, invisible burden, and they have carried it for so long that they have forgotten it is there. They have mistaken the weight for the normal condition of being alive. They think that this heaviness, this constant low-grade exhaustion, this feeling of never quite being at peace, is simply what it means to be human. It is not. The weight is optional. Every piece of it. The past cannot hurt you unless you pick it up and hold it. The future cannot frighten you unless you reach forward and grasp it. The present moment, all by itself, is almost always bearable. Often it is more than bearable. Often it is actually quite beautiful, if only we could clear away enough clutter to see it. This is not to say that life does not contain genuine difficulty. Of course it does. There is real loss, real pain, real hardship. But even these things become heavier than they need to be when we add to them. When we take a difficulty and wrap it in layers of resistance and resentment and fear, we transform a manageable burden into a crushing one. Consider the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is the direct experience of something difficult. It is the ache in your body, the sadness in your heart, the disappointment of plans gone wrong. Pain is honest. It arises, it is felt, and if left alone, it passes. Suffering is what we add to pain. It is the story we tell about the pain, the resistance we bring to it, the demand that it should not be happening. Suffering is the argument with reality. It is the exhausting internal fight against what is already true. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And the difference between them is letting go. There is another reason to learn this skill, one that extends beyond our own peace of mind. When we cannot let go, we do not suffer alone. Our holding on ripples outward, touching everyone in our lives. Think of someone you know who carries chronic resentment. Perhaps they were genuinely wronged at some point in the past. Perhaps they have good reason, by any reasonable standard, to feel hurt. But now, years later, they still carry it. And what has this done to them? Usually, it has made them difficult to be around. Their bitterness colors their interactions. It makes them suspicious, quick to perceive slights, slow to trust. It drains their energy, so they have less to give to the people who love them. It makes them tell the same stories over and over, dragging everyone around them back into a past that serves no one. This is not a judgment. It is simply what happens when we hold on too long. The weight does not stay contained within us. It spills over into our relationships, our families, our workplaces, our communities. There is a certain kind of humor in realizing this. One teacher used to say that he decided to be happy out of compassion for all the people who had to put up with him. It sounds like a joke, but it contains a profound truth. Learning to let go is not only a gift to yourself, it is a gift to everyone who shares your life. When you are at peace, your presence becomes peaceful. When you are not carrying unnecessary weight, you have energy and attention to offer others. When you have let go of old grievances, you can meet people fresh, without the filter of past hurts. Your lightness creates space for others to be lighter too. This is why the practice of letting go, though it may seem like a private matter, is actually deeply relational. It is an act of care for the world around you. Let us explore an image that may help make this concrete. Imagine that you are born with a backpack. It is empty at first, light and easy to carry. As you move through life, you begin to place things into this backpack. Some things are useful, a skill you have learned, a lesson from experience, a memory that brings you joy. These sit lightly and serve you well. But alongside these useful things, you begin to add other items. A grudge against someone who wronged you in childhood. The anxiety about a future that may never come to pass. The voice of a critical parent still commenting on your choices decades later. The shame of a mistake you made long ago. The fear of being judged. The belief that you are not enough. Each of these things has weight. And the backpack grows heavier. Now imagine that you never take anything out. You only add. Year after year, decade after decade, the backpack grows more and more full. You walk through life bent forward, straining against the weight. Your shoulders ache. Your back is tired. Every step requires more effort than it should. And here is the strangest part. If someone were to ask you why you carry such a heavy load, you might not even understand the question. You have been carrying it for so long that you have forgotten there was ever another way. You might say, this is just how life is. Everyone carries this much. It's normal. But it is not normal. It is only common. Look around at the people you know. Many of them are exhausted in a way that has nothing to do with physical labor. They are mentally tired, emotionally depleted, spiritually drained. They feel overwhelmed even when their external circumstances are manageable. They cannot seem to find rest even when they have time to rest. This is the weight of the backpack. This is what happens when we collect and never release. The question is not whether you are carrying too much. Almost everyone is. The question is whether you are ready to start taking things out. There is a particular kind of weight that deserves special attention because it is so common and so rarely examined. This is the weight of worry about the future. We spend an extraordinary amount of our mental energy on things that have not happened yet. We imagine disasters. We rehearse difficult conversations. We plan for contingencies that may never arise. We lie awake at night running through scenarios, trying to prepare ourselves for every possible outcome. And yet, if we are honest, very little of this worry serves us. The future that actually arrives is almost never the one we imagined. Life is far more surprising than our anxious minds can anticipate. The things we worried most about often fail to materialize. And the real challenges that come are usually ones we never saw coming. This is not to say that all planning is useless. Of course, we should think ahead, make reasonable preparations, act responsibly toward our future selves. But there is a vast difference between practical planning and anxious rumination. Planning says, "What can I do now to be ready?" Worry says, "What terrible things might happen, and can I somehow prevent them by thinking about them enough?" The answer, of course, is no. Thinking about terrible things does not prevent them. It only makes us miserable in the present. Here is a question worth sitting with. When is the only time you can actually do anything about your future? Right now. This moment. This is the only place where action is possible. The future does not exist yet. It is being constructed moment by moment in the present. Every time you worry about tomorrow, you neglect the only place where tomorrow is actually being built. This is why the wisest beings tend to emphasize presence over planning. Not because the future does not matter, but because the present is the only place where the future can be influenced. If you want a peaceful future, cultivate peace now. If you want a kind future, practice kindness now. If you want a healthy future, take care of yourself now. And if you want to stop suffering over a future that may never arrive, you must learn to let go of it, to hold it lightly, to do what you can in this moment and then release your grip on what comes next. Let us explore a situation that many people face, one that brings this teaching into sharp focus. Imagine that you go to see a doctor. Perhaps you have been feeling unwell. Perhaps it is just a routine checkup. But then the doctor says something that changes everything. There is a word like cancer, or serious, or chronic. Suddenly, the future you had imagined is thrown into question. This is a moment of genuine difficulty. The body is facing a real challenge. There is legitimate reason for concern, for action, for seeking help and support. But watch what the mind often does in such moments. It does not simply acknowledge the difficulty and then focus on what can be done. Instead, it begins to spin. It projects forward into imagined futures. It rehearses conversations with loved ones. It constructs scenarios of decline, of loss, of suffering. It asks, "What if?" 1,000 times, each question leading to darker and darker places. And while the mind is doing all this, what happens to the body? The stress response kicks in. Cortisol floods the system. Sleep becomes difficult. Appetite disappears or becomes erratic. The immune system, which needs all its resources to address the actual illness, is now also fighting the effects of chronic anxiety. In other words, the person who is already sick begins to worry themselves sicker. The mind, in its attempt to prepare for difficulty, creates additional difficulty. The weight in the backpack doubles and then doubles again. There is a kind of madness in this when you see it clearly. You are already facing one challenge. Why add a second challenge on top of it? Why fight a battle in your imagination while your body needs all your energy for the real battle? The practice here is not to pretend everything is fine. It is not to suppress genuine emotion or deny real difficulty. It is simply to stay close to what is actually happening, rather than racing ahead into what might happen. It is to meet this moment with all its uncertainty and to save your strength for what is real. This is letting go of the future. Not because the future does not matter, but because worry is not useful. What is useful is presence. What is useful is care. What is useful is directing your attention and energy toward what you can actually do right now, in this body, in this life. Let us return to where we began, to the mystery of how a single hurt becomes 1,000 hurts. There is a story that teachers sometimes tell. A young student comes to her master, upset about something a colleague has said. The words were unkind, perhaps untrue. The student feels wronged. "When did this happen?" the teacher asks. "3 weeks ago," the student replies. "And how many times have you thought about it since then?" The student pauses. She has thought about it many times. Dozens of times. Perhaps hundreds. She has replayed the conversation in her mind, imagined different responses she might have given, felt the flush of anger and hurt again and again. Each time you think about it, the teacher says gently, you are hurt again. Not by your colleague, who has moved on with their life and is probably not thinking about this at all, but by your own mind, which keeps returning to the wound and reopening it. The student protests. "But I can't help thinking about it. It just comes up." "Perhaps," the teacher says. "But once it comes up, you have a choice. You can pick it up and examine it, turn it over, feel its weight, rehearse all the reasons you are justified in your hurt. Or you can notice it, bow to it, and let it pass." "How?" the student asks. "How do you let it pass?" And this is the question that leads us forward. How do you let it pass? How do you release what the mind wants to hold? How do you set down what has become so familiar you hardly notice you are carrying it? The answer is not a single technique, but a way of living. It is a gradual shift in how we relate to our own minds. But it begins with a simple recognition. We are the ones doing the holding. The past cannot hold on to us. Only we can hold on to it. This means that release is always possible. It does not require anyone else's permission or cooperation. It does not require the person who hurt you to apologize. It does not require circumstances to change. It requires only your willingness to open your hand. We come now to the practical heart of this teaching. If letting go is a skill, how is it developed? The first step is simply to see what you are carrying. This sounds obvious, but it is more difficult than you might expect. We become so accustomed to our burdens that they feel like part of us. The anxiety that sits in your chest, the resentment that colors your thoughts, the fear that tightens your shoulders. These have been with you so long that you may not recognize them as separate from yourself. So the practice begins with attention. In quiet moments, turn your awareness inward. Notice what is there. Not to judge it or fix it, but simply to see it clearly. What are you holding? What thoughts return again and again? What feelings have become chronic rather than passing? This is the inventory of the backpack. And for many people, simply seeing what they are carrying is a revelation. They had not realized how much was in there. They had not understood why they were so tired. The second step is to question necessity. For each thing you find yourself carrying, ask, is this serving me? Is holding on to this making my life better? Is there any benefit to carrying this weight? Often, when you ask these questions honestly, the answer is no. The grudge you have been nursing for years is not protecting you. The worry about the future is not preparing you. The regret about the past is not teaching you. These things are simply heavy. They drain your energy without giving anything back. And once you see this clearly, something begins to shift. The grip loosens, just a little. The idea of release which may have seemed impossible before, begins to feel thinkable. The third step is to give yourself permission. Many people hold on to painful things because they believe they should. They believe that letting go of a grudge means the person who hurt them wins. They believe that letting go of worry means they are being irresponsible. They believe that letting go of regret means they are not taking their mistakes seriously enough. These beliefs are worth examining. Is it really true that holding on to resentment is a form of justice? Does worry actually make you more prepared? Does chronic regret lead to genuine learning? Or does it simply perpetuate suffering? For most people, the answer is that holding on serves no useful purpose. It is simply habit. It is simply what the mind does when it has not been trained otherwise. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to be at peace. You do not owe your suffering to anyone. Your pain does not make up for the wrong that was done. Your worry does not protect your loved ones. Your regret does not change the past. Release is not betrayal. Release is freedom. As this first exploration draws to a close, let us turn to what you can actually do. Begin by finding a quiet moment. It does not need to be long. Even a few minutes will serve. Sit comfortably. Let your body settle. Let your breath find its natural rhythm. Now ask yourself, what am I carrying that I do not need? Do not rush to answer. Let the question sit. Let it sink below the surface of the busy mind. See what rises in response. Perhaps an old hurt will surface. Perhaps an anxiety about something coming. Perhaps a regret, a resentment, a fear. Whatever arises, greet it with curiosity rather than judgment. You are not here to condemn yourself for carrying this. You are here to see clearly. Once you have identified something you are holding, ask the next question. What would it feel like to set this down? Do not try to force release. Simply imagine it. Feel what your body would feel if this weight were no longer there. Notice what your mind would be like without this constant background noise. Allow yourself to taste, even for a moment, the possibility of freedom. This taste is important. Many people have been carrying their burdens for so long that they cannot remember what lightness feels like. They need to be reminded that another way of being is possible. And then, if you are ready, try this. Take a breath in, and as you breathe out, imagine the weight leaving you. Imagine it falling away, dissolving, returning to the earth. You do not need to know where it goes. You only need to be willing to let it go. This may not work completely the first time. The mind is habitual. It has been holding on for years, perhaps decades. It will not necessarily release its grip just because you ask nicely. But with practice, with repetition, with patience, the habit of holding begins to weaken. The skill of release begins to grow. And each time you let something go, you will feel a little lighter, a little freer, a little more able to meet this moment as it actually is, rather than as your accumulated past insists it must be. We have covered much ground, and yet we have only begun. There are 4 ways of letting go, and we have barely touched the first. But already, perhaps, something has shifted. Perhaps you have seen more clearly what you carry. Perhaps you have questioned, for the first time in years, whether you really need to carry it all. This is enough for now. This is more than enough. In the sections that follow, we will explore specific methods for release. We will learn how to throw things away deliberately and ceremonially. We will discover the freedom that comes from wanting to be where we are. We will understand the joy of giving without expectation. And we will cultivate a mind to which nothing sticks, a mind that can meet each moment fresh and free. But all of this builds on the foundation we have laid here. The recognition that we are the ones doing the holding. The understanding that our burdens, however familiar, are optional. The willingness to consider that there might be another way. You have carried enough. You have carried it long enough. The time has come to learn how to set it down. Rest here for a moment. Let what you have heard settle. Notice what you are feeling in your body, in your heart. And when you are ready, we will continue the journey together. Now that we have seen what we carry, the question becomes practical. What do we do about it? It is one thing to recognize the weight in the backpack. It is another to actually remove it. Many people spend years in this gap, aware of their burdens but unable to release them. They know they are holding on too tightly. They can see how it is affecting their lives. And yet the fingers will not open. The grip will not ease. This is where the teaching becomes specific. The Buddha, in his very first discourse, spoke of letting go as the path to freedom. But he did not simply say, let go and leave it at that. He understood that such advice, however true, is not enough. We need to know how. And so he offered methods, concrete practices, ways of working with the mind that, over time, loosen its grip on what it holds. There are 4 of these methods, 4 doorways to release. Each one approaches the same destination from a different angle. Some will resonate more than others, depending on your temperament and circumstances. But all of them work. All of them have been tested by countless practitioners over thousands of years. The first method is the most direct. It is simply this: throw it away. Let us explore a story that has changed many lives. A young monk was walking through the forest with his teacher. It was early morning, just after the daily alms round, and the light was filtering through the trees in that soft way it does before the sun has fully risen. The path was strewn with fallen branches and leaves, the ordinary debris of forest life. As they walked in silence, the teacher bent down and picked up a stick from the ground. It was an unremarkable stick, the kind you might step over without noticing. He held it in his hand for a moment, feeling its weight. Then he turned to his student and asked a simple question. "Is this stick heavy?" The young monk considered. The stick was perhaps a foot long, dried wood, nothing substantial. "Not particularly," he said. The teacher nodded. Then, without ceremony, he tossed the stick away into the forest. It landed somewhere in the undergrowth, out of sight. "What about now?" he asked. "Is it heavy now?" The student understood. "No," he said. "It has no weight at all now." "It is only heavy when you hold it," the teacher said. And then he continued walking, leaving the student to absorb what had just happened. This teaching is so simple that the mind wants to dismiss it. Surely there must be more. Surely the path to freedom cannot be as straightforward as putting something down. But consider for a moment. What heavy things are you holding in your life right now? Perhaps it is a difficult relationship. Perhaps it is worry about your health. Perhaps it is a job that drains you, or a conflict that will not resolve, or a memory that keeps returning unbidden. Is that thing heavy? It is only heavy when you hold it. The stick in the forest did not become lighter when it was thrown away. It weighed exactly what it had always weighed. What changed was the relationship between the stick and the one who had been holding it. The moment the fingers opened, the moment the stick left the hand, its weight became irrelevant. It could weigh 1 pound or 100 pounds. It no longer mattered because it was no longer being carried. This is the first insight. The heaviness we feel is not inherent in the things themselves. It is created by our relationship to them, by our holding, by our refusal to let go, which means that relief is always available. Not by changing what we carry, but by setting it down. If it is so simple, why do we not do it? Why do we continue carrying what makes us tired and unhappy? Part of the answer is habit. We have been holding on for so long that we have forgotten there is any other option. The grip has become automatic, unconscious. We do not choose to hold on. We simply do, because we always have. But there is another reason, more subtle and more powerful. We hold on because we believe we should. We believe that holding on to a grudge is a form of justice. If we let it go, we fear. We are saying that what happened was acceptable. We are letting the other person off the hook. We are betraying ourselves and our pain. We believe that holding on to worry is a form of responsibility. If we let go of our fears about the future, we imagine, we are being reckless. We are tempting fate. We are failing to protect ourselves and those we love. We believe that holding on to regret is a form of learning. If we release our grip on past mistakes, we think, we will repeat them. We need the pain to remind us. We need the shame to keep us in line. These beliefs are worth examining carefully, because they are the bars of the cage we have built around ourselves. Is it true that holding on to resentment serves justice? Look honestly at your own experience. Has carrying that grudge brought you peace? Has it changed what happened? Has it improved your life in any measurable way? Or has it simply extended your suffering day after day for no purpose? Is it true that worry protects you? Again, look at your experience. Have your anxious thoughts about the future ever prevented anything bad from happening? Or have they simply made the present more difficult to bear? Is it true that regret leads to learning? Perhaps, in small doses, a moment of regret can clarify what matters to you. But chronic regret, the kind that plays on a loop for years, does this lead to wisdom? Or does it simply keep you trapped in a past you cannot change? When you examine these beliefs honestly, they begin to dissolve. You see that they are not serving you. They are simply habits of mind, inherited from a culture that does not know how to let go, passed down through generations that never learned another way. You are allowed to release them. You are allowed to set down what you have been carrying. This is not irresponsibility. This is not betrayal. This is the most profound form of self-care. Knowing that we can let go is one thing. Actually doing it is another. This is where ritual can help. There is a meditation retreat center nestled in the countryside where participants sometimes struggle with the weight they have brought with them. They have left their jobs and families for a period of silence, but their minds have not left anything behind. They sit in meditation, trying to find peace, while thoughts of unfinished business swirl endlessly. The teachers at this center developed a practice to help with this. They invite the struggling participants to walk into the surrounding forest and find a stick. It should be substantial, something with a bit of weight. Then, with a pen or a knife, they carve into the stick whatever it is they are carrying. It might be a name. It might be a word like work or fear or past. It might be a date, a place, something only they understand. Then they look at the stick. They feel its weight in their hand. They acknowledge what it represents. And then, with full intention, they throw it as far as they can into the forest. The physical act matters. There is something about the motion of throwing, the release of the fingers, the arc of the object through the air, that communicates with the deeper parts of the mind. It is not enough to simply think about letting go. The body needs to be involved. The ritual makes it real. Some people have adapted this practice in their own ways. One teacher suggested finding a stone, painting a word on it with spray paint, and then throwing it into a river. The stone sinks. The water closes over it. No trace remains. Others write their burdens on paper and burn them, watching the smoke carry the words away. Others bury things in the earth, returning them to the ground from which they came. The specific method matters less than the intention behind it. What matters is the deliberate choice to release, the ceremonial marking of a transition, the acknowledgement that something is being put down, consciously and completely. You might try this yourself, not as a metaphor, but as an actual practice. Find something physical that can represent what you are carrying. Hold it. Feel its weight. Acknowledge what it has been for you. And then, with full presence and intention, let it go. Throw it, burn it, bury it, sink it. Release it from your hand and from your mind. You may be surprised at how effective this simple act can be. Let us explore another image that illuminates this teaching. Imagine a prison cell. It is small and bare, with stone walls and a narrow window. Someone has been held in this cell for a very long time. Years, perhaps. Long enough that the cell has become familiar. The texture of the walls, the pattern of light through the window, the sounds of the corridor outside. All of it is known. Now imagine that one day the door to the cell swings open. There is no guard, no barrier. The way out is clear. Freedom is steps away. What happens? You might think the prisoner would rush out immediately, overjoyed at the chance to leave. But this is often not what happens. After years of confinement, the prisoner may hesitate at the threshold. The world outside is unknown, unpredictable. The cell, for all its limitations, is safe. It is familiar. It is home in a strange and sad way. Some prisoners, it is said, prefer to stay. They choose the known suffering of the cell over the unknown possibilities of freedom. This is what we do with our past. We build cells out of our memories, our grievances, our regrets. We furnish them with the stories we tell ourselves about what happened and what it means. And we stay inside, even when the door is open. Even when we could walk out at any time. The past cannot hold you. It has no hands, no locks, no bars. The only thing keeping you in the cell is your own reluctance to leave. Your own attachment to the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. Walking out requires courage. It requires a willingness to step into the unknown, to leave behind the identity you have built around your suffering. If you are no longer the person who was wronged, who are you? If you are no longer defined by that old loss, what defines you? These questions can be frightening, but they are also the questions that lead to freedom. And the door is always open. It has been open all along. There is a story about a teacher who grew up in a small country before moving far away to a distant land. Each time he returned home to visit his mother, he would bring her a gift. Something from his new country, a small token to remind her of him. His mother, like many people of her generation, had a mantel shelf above her fireplace. This was the place of honor in her home, where she displayed her most treasured possessions: photographs, small ornaments, things that carried memory and meaning. The first time he visited, the teacher brought her a small stuffed kangaroo, soft and endearing. She loved it. "Every time I see this," she said, "I will think of you in that faraway place." She placed it carefully on her mantel shelf. The next visit, he brought a koala. Same response. Onto the mantel shelf it went, next to the kangaroo. The visits continued over the years. A kookaburra joined the collection. Then a platypus. The mantel shelf grew more crowded, but still there was room. Then one visit, he brought a wombat. It was a larger gift, plump and substantial. His mother tried to place it on the mantel shelf, but there was no room. She shifted the other animals, rearranged them, tried different configurations. But the shelf was simply too full. Every time she got the wombat to fit, something else fell off. She spent an hour trying to make it work, growing more and more frustrated. Finally, her son said gently, "Why not take some of the other things off? Make room for the new one." She looked at him, almost offended. "I can't do that," she said. "These are precious. They remind me of you." He smiled. "That shelf is having a nervous breakdown," he said. "There is simply too much on it. This is what happens in our minds. We collect and never release. Every experience, every memory, every idea gets placed on the mental mantel shelf until there is no room left. And when something new tries to arrive, there is no space for it. The whole structure threatens to collapse under its own weight." The teacher learned a different way. If something new came to his mantel shelf, he would make room for it by removing what was already there. One thing at a time. Always space. Always room for what is arising now. This is not about having a poor memory or being unable to value the past. It is about recognizing that the mind has limited space and that we must choose wisely what we fill it with. If you keep everything, you can hold nothing properly. If you release what no longer serves, you can fully embrace what is here. This principle extends beyond memories to the very way we structure our lives. There is a teacher who holds many responsibilities. He is the spiritual director of one organization, the leader of another, the advisor to several more. He travels frequently, teaching in different countries, serving different communities. On paper, his life looks impossibly complicated. And yet, when you meet him, he seems at peace, unhurried, fully present to whatever is in front of him. How does he manage this? "I only hold one thing at a time," he explains. "When I am here, in this room, with you, that is the only thing on my mantel shelf. All the other responsibilities exist, but they are not in my hands right now. I have set them down." When I leave here and go somewhere else, I will pick up whatever is needed there. But only that. Only one thing at a time. This is profoundly counter to how most of us live. We pride ourselves on multitasking, on keeping many balls in the air, on never letting anything slip from our awareness. We carry our work into our homes and our homes into our work. We are physically present but mentally elsewhere. We are everywhere and nowhere at once. And we wonder why we are exhausted. The practice of one thing at a time is not about doing less. This teacher accomplishes more than most people could imagine. It is about being fully where you are, with whatever you are doing, and trusting that everything else can wait. This requires throwing things away, not permanently, but temporarily. When you sit down to a meal with your family, throw work away for that time. When you are engaged in a project, throw your worries about other projects away. When you are listening to a friend, throw your own agenda away. Each time you do this, you are practicing release. You are proving to yourself that you can set things down without disaster. You are training the mind in the skill of letting go. And gradually, something shifts. The mind that was always grasping begins to relax. The hands that were always full begin to open. The weight that was always there begins to lift. As we near the end of this exploration of the first method, let us consider practically what can be released. The past. This is perhaps the heaviest stone in most people's backpacks. The things that happened, the words that were said, the choices that were made. None of this can be changed. Carrying it serves no purpose except to make the present more difficult. The past can be thrown away. The future, not the practical planning that helps you navigate life, but the anxious speculation, the catastrophic imagination, the endless rehearsal of conversations and scenarios that may never occur. This too can be thrown away. The complaining mind. There is a voice in most of us that is never satisfied. That finds fault with everything. That notices what is wrong rather than what is right. This voice has its uses in small doses, but when it runs constantly, it poisons life. It can be thrown away. Unnecessary thinking. We think far more than we need to. Most of our thoughts are repetitive, circular, unproductive. They separate us from direct experience, from the actual texture and color of life. There is a teaching story about a student who could not stop himself from commenting on a beautiful sunset. "What a beautiful sunset," he said. But in speaking, he stopped seeing. He was watching words instead of light. Much of our thinking is like this. It can be thrown away. The need to be right. How much energy do we spend defending our positions, arguing our points, insisting on our version of events? What if we simply let this go? What if being at peace mattered more than being right? Other people's opinions. We carry around ideas about what others think of us, and we adjust our behavior accordingly. But we cannot actually know what others think. We are carrying imaginary weight. It can be thrown away. Each of these is a stone in the backpack. Each one adds to the burden without adding to your life. And each one, when you look at it clearly, can be set down. Not forever, necessarily. Not in every situation. But right now, in this moment, you have the power to release your grip. You have the power to throw away what does not serve you. This is the first liberation. This is the first way of letting go. Let us close this section with a practice you can take into your daily life. Each morning, before the day begins, take a moment to check your backpack. Notice what you are carrying. Are there things from yesterday that do not need to come with you today? Resentments, worries, unfinished mental arguments? See if you can consciously set them down before you begin. Each evening, before sleep, do the same thing in reverse. What did you pick up during the day that does not need to stay? The frustrating conversation, the anxious thought, the self-critical voice? See if you can leave these outside the bedroom so you can sleep in peace. And throughout the day, when you notice yourself growing heavy, pause. Ask yourself, what am I holding right now? Is it necessary? Can I set it down, even for a moment? The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. The grip that once seemed permanent begins to loosen. The hands that were always clenched begin to open. You will not become irresponsible. You will not stop caring about what matters. If anything, you will care more effectively, because you will have energy that was previously being drained by unnecessary weight. The skill of throwing away is not about becoming empty. It is about becoming free. Rest here for a moment. Feel what it might be like to carry less. And when you are ready, we will explore the second way of letting go together. We have explored the first way of letting go, the direct path of simply throwing things away. It is powerful medicine, this practice of release. And yet there are times when throwing away is not possible. There are situations we cannot leave, circumstances we cannot change, realities we must face, whether we wish to or not. What then? This is where the second way of letting go becomes essential. It does not ask you to discard anything. It does not require you to change your situation. Instead, it transforms your relationship to whatever situation you find yourself in. The teaching is deceptively simple. So simple that the mind may resist it, looking for something more complicated, more effortful, more worthy of the name spiritual practice. But simplicity is not the same as ease. And this teaching, though simple to understand, can take a lifetime to truly embody. Here it is, want to be where you are. That is all. Wherever you find yourself, whatever is happening, want to be there. Not because you have to, not because you should, but because wanting to be here is the doorway to freedom. There is a story that beautifully illuminates this teaching. It concerns a monastery in a rural area of a Western country and a maximum security prison not far away. For many years, monks from the monastery would visit the prison to teach meditation and offer spiritual guidance to the inmates. One monk in particular developed a rapport with the prisoners. They appreciated his honesty, his lack of judgment, his willingness to sit with them as equals. After some time, the prisoners grew curious about this man who came to see them each week. What was his life like? What did monks actually do? One evening, they asked him to stay a bit longer after the formal teaching. They offered him tea and chocolate, which monks are generally happy to accept, and they began to ask questions. What time do you wake up in the morning? One prisoner asked. 4 o'clock, the monk replied. The prisoners exchanged glances. 4 in the morning? Even here, they don't make us get up that early. The monk smiled. Well, it is optional. Optional? Yes. We can always get up earlier if we want to. The prisoners were not sure if he was joking. And then what do you do? We meditate. For how long? A few hours usually. Can't you watch television or something? Listen to music? We don't have televisions, the monk said. Or radios. Or music. Now the prisoners were genuinely shocked. We have televisions in our cells, one of them said. You don't have televisions in your monastery? No. So after meditation, you have breakfast? Yes, a small breakfast. Usually just a cup of cereal. 1 cup. That's it? Here we can have bacon, eggs, pancakes, whatever we want. You only get 1 cup of cereal? That's right. And then? Then we work. Hard physical labor, most days. Building, cleaning, gardening, whatever needs to be done. The prisoners shook their heads. In prison, there were jobs, but nothing too strenuous. Certainly nothing like what the monk was describing. So I suppose you look forward to lunch, one prisoner said. Yes, lunch is our main meal. But we eat it from a single bowl. Everything goes in together. What do you mean, everything goes in together? Well, whatever food is offered, it all goes in the same bowl. Sometimes you end up with curry next to ice cream, or custard on top of spaghetti. That's disgusting, a prisoner said. Even in solitary confinement, they give you a tray with separate compartments. You don't have compartments? No compartments. And in the afternoon? More meditation. Can't you play sports or something? Cards? Anything? No, we just meditate. Don't you get bored? The monk considered this. Not really. That is what we are there to do. Well, said a prisoner, clearly hoping for some relief in this grim picture. At least you must have a good dinner to look forward to. Dinner? The monk looked puzzled. We don't eat dinner. Just the one meal, in the morning and midday. Nothing in the evening. Nothing? We get dinner here, and snacks whenever we want them. Not in the monastery. So, what do you do in the evening then? The prisoners already knew the answer. Don't tell us. You meditate. Yes. And then you go to bed, I suppose. At least you can sleep. Well, the monk said, we don't actually have beds. I sleep on the floor. This was too much. The prisoners stared at him. Even in prison, the most basic prison in the country, there were beds. Thin mattresses on metal frames, but beds nonetheless. The room was quiet for a moment. The prisoners looked at this gentle man who had been visiting them, teaching them, treating them with such kindness, and they saw him differently now. They saw someone whose life was, by any material measure, harder than their own. One prisoner, moved by genuine concern, finally spoke. That sounds terrible, he said. Your life in that monastery. Why don't you come in here and stay with us instead? He meant it. He was offering what he thought was a better situation. And in that moment, something profound was revealed. Think about what was being compared. A monastery with no television, no music, no comfortable beds, no evening meals, no entertainment of any kind. A place where you wake before dawn, work hard all day, eat simple food from a single bowl, and sleep on the floor. And a prison. A maximum security prison, to be sure, with walls and guards and locked doors, but also with televisions in the cells, decent food on proper trays, beds to sleep in, and far less demanding physical labor. By any objective measure, the prison was more comfortable than the monastery. And yet people were desperate to leave the prison. They counted the days until their release. They dreamed of freedom. Some even risked their lives trying to escape. While at the monastery, there was a waiting list. People applied and hoped to be accepted. Once there, they stayed for years, decades, entire lifetimes. They were not trying to escape. They were grateful to be there. What was the difference? Only one thing. The people in the monastery wanted to be there. The people in the prison did not. That is all. That is the entire difference between imprisonment and freedom. Not the conditions, not the comfort, not the presence or absence of walls. Simply whether you want to be where you are. This realization changes everything. Once you understand this principle, you begin to see prisons everywhere. Not physical prisons with bars and guards, but the prisons we construct in our own minds. Any place you do not want to be is a prison. If you are in a relationship and you do not want to be there, that relationship is your prison. It does not matter how kind your partner is, how beautiful your home, how enviable your life appears to others. If you do not want to be there, you are imprisoned. If you are in a job and you do not want to be there, that job is your prison. It does not matter how good the salary, how prestigious the title, how comfortable the office. If you do not want to be there, you are not free. If you are in a body that is aging or ill, and you do not want to be there, your own body becomes a prison. You are trapped inside something you wish you could escape. Even a single moment can be a prison. Sitting in a room, listening to someone speak, and wishing you were somewhere else. That room, that moment, becomes a cell. We do this constantly. We imprison ourselves dozens of times a day, simply by not wanting to be where we are. And here is the remarkable thing. We can free ourselves just as easily. Not by changing our circumstances, but by changing our wanting. When you want to be where you are free. Instantly. Completely. It does not matter what is happening around you. It does not matter how difficult the situation appears. If you want to be there, you are not imprisoned. This is contentment. Not as passive resignation, not as giving up on life, but as active liberation. The deliberate choice to want what is, rather than to want what is not. Let us lighten the mood with a story that illustrates this teaching from a different angle. At the same monastery we have been discussing, there was a great deal of physical work to be done. Buildings to construct, grounds to maintain, endless projects requiring hands and effort. The monks participated in all of it, regardless of their position or seniority. One day, there was concrete work happening. Anyone who has worked with concrete knows what this means. It splashes. It splatters. It gets everywhere. By the end of the job, anyone involved looks like they have been in a losing fight with a cement mixer. The senior teacher at the monastery had been helping with this work. He enjoyed it, actually. There is something satisfying about physical labor, about building something with your hands, about getting thoroughly dirty in service of something worthwhile. As he was walking back to his quarters to clean up, still covered head to toe in concrete dust and splatter, he passed a visitor. She was an elegant woman in expensive traditional dress. clearly someone of refinement and status. She had come to meet the famous teacher she had heard so much about. She looked at this filthy figure approaching her and felt a moment of distaste. Clearly, this was some junior monk, some laborer. Certainly not the wise teacher she had traveled to see. "Excuse me," she said. "I have come to meet the abbot. Can you tell me where I might find him?" The monk thought quickly. "If you go to the main hall," he said, "I believe he will be there in about 15 minutes. The woman thanked him and walked toward the hall. The monk hurried to his room, took a quick shower, changed into clean robes, and made his way to the hall by a different route. When he arrived, freshly presentable, the woman was waiting. "I am the one you are looking for," he said. She never recognized him as the same person. They had a wonderful conversation. He spoke about the monastery, about the teachings, about the path to peace. She was deeply moved by his wisdom and presence. As she was preparing to leave, she felt she should mention something. "You have a beautiful monastery here," she said, "and you are clearly a wonderful teacher. But if you don't mind me saying, I saw a very dirty monk when I arrived. Perhaps you should speak to him about his appearance." The teacher nodded gravely. "I will speak to him later," he said. And he did. This story is amusing, but it also reveals something important. The teacher was not suffering while covered in concrete. He was not imprisoned by the hard work, the dirt, the physical discomfort. He wanted to be there. He chose to be there. And so the experience, rather than being an ordeal, was simply life being lived fully. This is what becomes possible when you want to be where you are. Even hard things become simply things. Even difficult moments become simply moments. The resistance falls away, and what remains is just experience, neither good nor bad, simply what is happening now. Let us bring this teaching into ordinary life, into the situations most of us face regularly. You are driving somewhere. Perhaps you are late. Perhaps you have somewhere important to be. And then traffic stops. Cars ahead of you, cars behind you, and nothing moving. You are stuck. What happens in your mind? For most people, resistance arises immediately. This should not be happening. I need to be somewhere. Why is this taking so long? The body tenses. The breath becomes shallow. Frustration builds, sometimes spilling over into anger at other drivers, at the road, at life itself. And does any of this help? Does your frustration make the traffic move faster? Does your resistance change anything about the situation? Of course not. The traffic will move when it moves. Your emotional state has no effect on it whatsoever. All your resistance accomplishes is to make you miserable while you wait. Now imagine a different response. The traffic stops. You notice it, and instead of resisting, you decide to want to be there. Not because you planned to be in traffic. Not because you enjoy being late, but because you are there, and fighting reality is exhausting, and there is actually nothing wrong with this moment except your opinion of it. You take a breath. You let your shoulders relax. You look around. Perhaps you notice the sky, which you had not looked at all day. Perhaps you listen to the sounds around you. Perhaps you simply sit in stillness, which is rare enough in a busy life. The traffic has not changed, but you have. And in that change, freedom is found. This is not positive thinking. It is not pretending that everything is wonderful. It is simply dropping the argument with reality. It is recognizing that you are where you are, and that fighting this fact creates suffering, while accepting it creates peace. The traffic jam becomes a teacher. The delay becomes a gift. The prison becomes, if only for a moment, a monastery. There are situations more serious than traffic. There are circumstances we would never choose, hardships we would give anything to avoid. And yet they come. They come to all of us eventually. Illness comes. The body that served us so well begins to falter. Pain becomes a daily companion. The future we imagined closes down, and we are left with a reality we never wanted. Loss comes. People we love leave us, through distance or death. The relationships that anchored our lives dissolve. We find ourselves alone in ways we never anticipated. Failure comes. The career we built crumbles. The plans we made fall apart. We are left standing in the rubble of our expectations. And ultimately, death comes. Our own death, approaching with whatever speed it chooses, indifferent to our preferences. In these situations, the first way of letting go may not be available. You cannot throw away your illness. You cannot discard your grief. You cannot simply set down the fact of your own mortality. What then? This is where the second way becomes not just useful but essential. When you cannot change your situation, you can still change your relationship to it. When you cannot escape where you are, you can still choose to want to be there. This sounds almost cruel to suggest. How can anyone want to be sick? How can anyone want to be dying? But consider the alternative. If you do not want to be where you are, you suffer twice. Once from the difficulty itself, and again from your resistance to it. You add mental anguish to physical pain. You pile despair on top of loss. People who face serious illness sometimes discover something unexpected. When they stop fighting, when they accept where they are, a strange peace becomes available. Not happiness exactly, but a kind of freedom. The freedom of no longer being at war with reality. They are still sick. The symptoms have not changed, but something in them has surrendered, and in that surrender, they find rest. This is not giving up. It is not passive resignation. It is recognizing that some things cannot be changed, and that peace is still possible even in unchangeable circumstances. Let us speak of dying, because this is where the teaching becomes most profound. There comes a time for each of us when death is near. The body is failing. The end is approaching. There is no more treatment, no more hope of recovery. Only the final passage remains. For many people, this is a time of terrible struggle. They fight against what is happening. They rage against the dying of the light. They refuse to accept the unacceptable. And their final days are filled with anguish. Not just the physical discomfort of a body shutting down, but the mental torment of resistance, of denial, of a desperate wish to be anywhere other than where they are. They make a prison of their own body in its final moments. But there is another way. Some people, facing the same circumstances, find peace. They accept that they are dying. They want to be where they are, even if where they are is the threshold of death. This does not mean they wanted to die. It does not mean they are glad their life is ending. It simply means they have stopped fighting. They have dropped the argument with reality. They have chosen to be present for their own death, rather than struggling against it. These people often die with a quality of grace that touches everyone around them. Their final days, though difficult, are not desperate. Their last breaths, though the end of everything they knew, are peaceful. This is what becomes possible when you want to be where you are. Even at the very end, the teaching we have been exploring is not just about being happier in traffic jams or more content in difficult jobs. It is about something much deeper. It is about the possibility of being free in any circumstance whatsoever, including the final circumstance that none of us can avoid. Before we move on, we must address a concern that often arises at this point. Does wanting to be where you are mean giving up on change? Does contentment mean accepting injustice, tolerating mistreatment, staying in situations that genuinely need to change? No, and understanding this distinction is crucial. Contentment is about your inner state, not your outer actions. You can be deeply at peace with this moment and still work to change what needs changing. You can want to be where you are and still take steps towards something better. In fact, contentment often makes positive change more possible, not less. When you are not burning with resistance, you see more clearly. When you are not fighting reality, you have more energy for constructive action. When you are at peace with what is, you can respond skillfully rather than reacting blindly. The person in an unhealthy relationship can want to be where they are, in this moment, while also recognizing that change is needed and taking steps to create it. These are not contradictory. The wanting to be here is about this moment. The action for change is about the next. Contentment is not about becoming passive. It is about becoming free. And from freedom, wise action becomes possible. How do you cultivate this quality of wanting to be where you are? How do you transform the prisons of daily life into spaces of freedom? It begins with a simple question, asked again and again throughout your day. Do I want to be here? Ask it in the morning when you wake. Do I want to be in this bed, in this body, facing this day? If the answer is no, notice that. Notice the subtle imprisonment you have created before the day has even begun. Then try something. Try wanting to be there. Not because you should, not because it is the right thing to do, but as an experiment. See what happens in your body when you shift from resistance to acceptance. Notice if anything changes in your mind. Ask the question throughout the day. In meetings you did not want to attend. In conversations you did not want to have. In moments of boredom, frustration, impatience, do I want to be here? And each time the answer is no, try shifting, even for a moment, even experimentally. See if you can find the wanting. This is not about forcing yourself to feel something you do not feel. It is about discovering that the wanting is available if you look for it. It is about recognizing that your relationship to the present moment is something you have influence over. Over time, this practice transforms things. The automatic resistance begins to weaken. The habitual not wanting begins to soften. You find yourself more often at peace with where you are, not because you have given up on life, but because you have stopped fighting it. And in that peace, something remarkable happens. Life becomes simpler, easier, more enjoyable. Not because circumstances have changed, but because you have. The prison doors open, and you realize they were never locked. Rest here for a moment. Notice where you are right now. Can you want to be here? Can you find even for this breath, the freedom of contentment. Take your time, and when you are ready, we will explore the third way of letting go together. We have now explored two ways of letting go. The first was direct, simply throw away what you do not need to carry. The second was relational. Change how you hold what cannot be thrown away by wanting to be where you are. Both of these methods work with what is already present. They address the burdens we have accumulated, the situations we find ourselves in. They are, in a sense, remedial. They help us deal with what has already happened. The third way of letting go is different. It is preventive. It stops the weight from accumulating in the first place. It addresses the root cause of so much of our suffering, which is not the things we carry, but the way we pick them up. This third method concerns how we give. Not just the giving of money or gifts, though that is part of it, but the giving of our attention, our energy, our love, our work, our very lives. Everything we do can be understood as a form of giving, and the way we give determines whether we accumulate freedom or bondage. The teaching is this: give expecting nothing back in return. This sounds simple, perhaps even obvious, but look closely at your own life, and you will see how rarely you actually do it. Look at your relationships, your work, your spiritual practice. See how much of what you call giving is actually a form of exchange, a transaction with expected returns, and see how much suffering this creates. Let us explore a story that reveals how foreign this concept has become in modern life. A woman called a meditation center one afternoon. She had heard there was a teacher there who gave talks on spiritual topics, and she was curious to attend. But she had a practical question first. "How much do you have to pay to get in?" she asked. "Nothing," said the person who answered. "There is no charge." There was a pause on the line. The woman seemed confused. "I don't think you understand me," she said. "How much money do you have to pay to get through the door?" "There is no money required. You simply come in, listen to the talk, and leave when it is over." Another pause, longer this time. The woman's voice took on a note of frustration, as if she were speaking to someone who did not understand basic concepts. "Listen," she said slowly. "How much dollar and cents do I have to cough up to come to this talk?" "Madam," came the patient reply, "you do not have to cough up anything. There is no fee to enter, no fee to leave. We do not ask for donations at the door. We do not pass a collection plate. We do not give you materials asking for money afterward. It is completely free. You simply come, you listen, and you go." There was a very long pause now. The woman was genuinely struggling to understand what she was being told. In her experience, nothing worked this way. Everything had a price. Everything was an exchange. Finally, with a tone of utter sincerity, she asked the question that revealed everything. "Well, what do you guys get out of this then?" She could not conceive of giving without getting. It was outside her frame of reference. The idea that someone might offer something of value simply because they wanted to give it, with no expectation of return, was incomprehensible. And yet this is exactly what the third way of letting go asks of us. Most of what we call giving is not really giving at all. It is exchanging. We give to our partners, but we expect love in return. We give to our children, but we expect gratitude and obedience. We give to our friends, but we expect loyalty and support. We give at work, but we expect recognition and advancement. We give to charitable causes, but we expect to feel good about ourselves, or to be seen as generous, or to receive some spiritual merit. None of this is wrong, exactly. Exchange is a natural part of human life. We live in relationship, and relationships involve reciprocity. But there is a problem with exchange that becomes clear when you examine it closely. When you give expecting something in return, you have not really let go of what you gave. You have simply converted it into a different form. You have traded one thing for another, and now you are holding the expectation of return. And what happens when that return does not come? You feel cheated, resentful, hurt. You gave so much, and you received so little. You expected appreciation and got indifference. You expected love and got neglect. You expected recognition and got overlooked. This is not the suffering of having lost something. It is the suffering of expectation, of the gap between what you thought you would receive and what you actually received. And this suffering is entirely optional. It exists only because of how you gave. When you give expecting nothing back in return, there is no gap. There is no expectation to be frustrated. You gave because you wanted to give. The giving itself was complete. Whatever happens afterward is separate and cannot diminish what you offered. This is true letting go. Not just releasing what you hold, but releasing your grip on the future consequences of your actions. In many places where people gather for spiritual teaching, you will find the names of donors prominently displayed. Plaques on walls, inscriptions over doorways, bricks with names etched into them, lists in programs and newsletters. This is how giving usually works. You give and you receive recognition. Your generosity is acknowledged. Your name is preserved. There is an exchange, even if the currency is not money, but reputation. There is a meditation center that operates differently. The main hall where teachings happen was built entirely through donations. Thousands of people contributed, some giving large sums, some giving whatever they could afford. The total cost was substantial, enough to build a beautiful and functional space for practice. And yet there is not a single name displayed anywhere. No plaque, no list of donors, no acknowledgement of who gave what. The same is true of their retreat facility, which cost several million to construct. People donated generously over many years to make it possible, and there is no record visible to visitors of who contributed. No way to know whose money built which building, whose generosity funded which program. Why? Because genuine giving expects nothing back in return. When you give a donation and expect to have your name inscribed above the entrance, that is not really giving. That is purchasing advertising space. That is buying recognition. There is nothing wrong with it, but it is an exchange, not a gift. True giving is anonymous. Not because anonymity is morally superior, but because when you need no recognition, you demonstrate that the giving itself was enough. You wanted to give. You gave. It is complete. This is a profound form of letting go. You release not only the money or the time or the energy, but also the story of yourself as the giver. You let go of the identity that comes with generosity. You simply give, and then you walk away. Let us explore a simpler example, one that might illuminate this teaching from a different angle. There is a teacher who, each morning, has a simple breakfast. Just a cup of cereal with milk, nothing elaborate. And each morning, as he sits down to eat, a cat appears. The cat is not his. It belongs to no one in particular. It simply lives around the monastery and has learned that this human has milk. The cat approaches. It looks at the bowl. It waits, and the teacher shares his milk with the cat. Sometimes half of what he has. Sometimes, if the cat seems particularly hungry, most of it. The cat drinks. The cat finishes. The cat looks around briefly, sniffs the air, and walks away. No acknowledgement. No gratitude. No affection. Not even a meow. The cat simply takes what is offered and leaves. Does the teacher feel resentful? Does he feel used? Does he complain that the cat never says thank you, never shows appreciation, never gives anything back? No. He finds joy in the giving itself. He is not giving to the cat in order to receive something from the cat. He is giving because he wants to give. The cat's response, or lack of response, is irrelevant. This is what giving without expectation looks like in practice. You offer what you have to offer. What happens next is not your concern. Many of us give to our families, our friends, our communities in the way the woman on the phone expected. We give and then we wait, consciously or unconsciously, for the return. We keep a ledger, even if we do not admit it. We notice when the balance seems unfair. What if we gave like the teacher gives to the cat? What if we offered our love, our time, our energy, our resources, simply because we wanted to offer them? What if we expected nothing in return, not even acknowledgement? We would be free. Free of the endless calculation of exchange. Free of the disappointment when returns fall short. Free of the subtle resentment that builds when we feel we have given more than we have received. This is the third way of letting go. Consider how much of your suffering comes from frustrated expectations. You expected your partner to remember your anniversary. They forgot. You are hurt. You expected your children to call on your birthday. They did not. You are wounded. You expected your boss to recognize your hard work. You were passed over for promotion. You are bitter. You expected your friend to support you in a difficult time. They were absent. You are angry. In each case, the suffering does not come from what happened. It comes from the gap between what happened and what you expected to happen. The expectation creates a standard, and when reality fails to meet that standard, pain follows. Now imagine those same situations without expectation. Your partner forgets your anniversary, but you had no expectation that they would remember. So there is no gap. There is simply what happened, which you can address or not address as seems wise. Your children do not call on your birthday, but you gave them life and love without expecting anything in return. So their silence does not wound you. You simply notice it and continue with your day. Your boss does not recognize your work, but you did the work because you wanted to do it, because it was yours to do. So the lack of recognition does not diminish what you offered. Your friend is absent in your difficulty, but you never expected them to be present. So their absence is simply information, not betrayal. This is not about becoming cold or disconnected. It is about becoming free. When you give without expectation, you are not vulnerable to the whims of others. Your peace does not depend on their behavior. You have given completely, and that completeness cannot be taken from you. This teaching transforms not only how we relate to others, but how we relate to spiritual practice itself. Many people come to meditation expecting to get something. They want peace. They want clarity. They want enlightenment. They want to feel better, sleep better, be less anxious, be more focused. They approach practice as a transaction. I will sit here and do this thing, and in return I will receive these benefits. And when the benefits do not come, or do not come quickly enough, they become frustrated. They feel cheated. They conclude that meditation does not work, or does not work for them, and they give up. But what if meditation were understood differently? What if, instead of a transaction, it were an offering? There is a teaching from an old master that reframes the entire practice. He said, "You meditate not to get something, not to attain things. You meditate to let go." Meditation as letting go. Meditation as giving. Not giving to some external deity or force, but giving away your time, your attention, your grasping. Offering up the busy mind, the restless body, the endless wanting. Not in order to receive peace in return, but simply as an act of release. When you sit to meditate with this understanding, everything changes. You are no longer waiting for results. You are not watching the clock, wondering when the benefits will arrive. You are simply giving. Each breath is an offering. Each moment of attention is a gift. And paradoxically, it is often this approach that leads to the deepest experiences. When you stop trying to get something from meditation, something opens. When you release expectation, space appears. The peace you were seeking arrives, but only after you stopped seeking it. This is the mystery of giving without expectation. What you release comes back to you, but only when you have truly released it. There is a reason we are drawn to give, even when we do not fully understand it. Giving feels good. Not the giving that is really exchange, not the giving that expects return, but genuine giving. The kind where you offer something simply because you want to offer it, with no thought of what comes back. Think of a time when you gave in this way. Perhaps you helped a stranger, someone you would never see again, someone who could never repay you. Perhaps you gave anonymously to a cause you believed in. Perhaps you simply did something kind for someone, not because you wanted gratitude, but because kindness was what wanted to happen. How did it feel? Most people, when they remember such moments, report a kind of warmth, a sense of rightness, a quiet joy that does not depend on external validation. The giving itself was the reward. This is not an accident. It is not a trick of psychology. It is pointing to something true about the nature of reality. We are not isolated beings competing for scarce resources. We are interconnected. And when we act from that interconnection, when we give from overflow rather than deficit, we touch something larger than ourselves. The teacher gives talks expecting nothing in return. Not thanks, not recognition, not the right cup of tea afterward. He gives because he loves to give, because teaching is his joy, because serving is what he is here to do. And he is rich, not in money, certainly, but in happiness, in peace, in a kind of abundance that cannot be taken away. This richness comes not from what he has accumulated, but from what he has released, from the countless acts of giving that expected nothing back. This is available to anyone. You do not have to be a teacher or a monk. You simply have to give. Really give. Without calculation, without ledger, without the subtle expectation that lives beneath so much of what we offer. Give to your partner without expecting love in return. Give to your children without expecting gratitude. Give to your work without expecting recognition. Give to life itself without expecting anything back. And see what happens. See how free you become. See how light. The deepest expression of this teaching is to understand your entire life as an offering. You have been given this existence, this body, this mind, this span of years. You did not earn it. You did not create it. It simply came to you, a gift from sources you cannot fully comprehend. What will you do with this gift? One option is to grasp it, to use it for acquisition, accumulation, self-protection, to squeeze from life everything you can get, and to measure your success by how much you have accumulated by the end. Another option is to offer it back, to see your life not as something to be hoarded, but as something to be given. To ask not, what can I get? But what can I give? This is not about self-sacrifice in a grim or joyless way. It is about recognizing that the deepest fulfillment comes not from getting, but from giving. That the hand, which is always grasping, is never at peace, while the hand, which is always open, is always full. When you give your attention fully to the person in front of you, you are making an offering. When you do your work with care and presence, regardless of recognition, you are making an offering. When you bring kindness to a difficult situation, patience to a frustrating moment, love to a loveless place, you are making an offering. And with each offering, you let go. You release your grip on outcome. You give without grasping. And in that release, you find what you were looking for all along. Let us return to the practical reality of living without expectations. It sounds beautiful in theory, but surely, you might think, some expectations are necessary. Should we not expect basic decency from others? Should we not expect commitments to be honored? Should we not expect life to have some fairness, some justice, some return on our efforts? Here is a way to think about it. Expectations are like contracts you have written in your own mind, which the other party has never signed. You have decided what should happen, and you hold others to that standard without their agreement. When you let go of expectations, you do not let go of discernment. You can still notice when someone treats you poorly. You can still recognize when a commitment has been broken. You can still act to protect yourself or to change situations that need changing. But you do it without the added suffering of betrayal. You do it without the weight of, "This should not be happening." You respond to what is, rather than to the gap between what is and what you think should be. This is freedom. The freedom to engage fully with life without being devastated by its refusal to meet your specifications. The freedom to give fully without being crushed when your gifts are not received as you hoped. Life becomes lighter, more interesting, more surprising. When you have no expectations, everything that comes is a gift. You are not comparing it to what you thought would happen. You are simply receiving what is. And when difficult things come, as they inevitably will, you meet them cleanly. Without the additional layer of, "I expected better." Just this. Just what is happening. Just reality, asking for your response. How do you cultivate this quality of giving without expectation? Begin by noticing your expectations. They are often invisible, so habitual that you do not recognize them as expectations. But they reveal themselves when they are frustrated. Anytime you feel disappointed, resentful, or betrayed, an expectation has been unmet. Notice it. Name it. See it clearly. Then, before you act, before you give anything, ask yourself, what am I expecting in return? If you are about to do something kind for your partner, check. Are you hoping for appreciation? For reciprocation? For a better mood later? If you are about to work hard on a project, check. Are you expecting recognition? Advancement? Praise? If you are about to meditate, check. Are you expecting peace? Clarity? Progress? There is no need to judge yourself for having expectations. They are natural. The practice is simply to see them and then to gently release them. Try, as an experiment, doing one thing each day with genuinely no expectation of return. Something small, perhaps. A kindness to a stranger. A task done thoroughly even though no one will notice. An offering made anonymously. Notice how it feels. Notice the freedom in it. Notice the absence of the subtle tension that comes with waiting for return. And gradually, let this quality spread. Let more of your giving become genuine giving. Let more of your life become offering. You will not become a doormat. You will not be taken advantage of. People who give freely, without expectation, tend to be treated with respect because they carry themselves with a quiet dignity that comes from not needing anything from anyone. What you will become is free. Free of the exhausting mental accounting. Free of the disappointment when ledgers do not balance. Free of the resentment that builds when you feel you have given more than you have received. You will simply give because giving is what you do. And in that giving, you will find more than you ever could have gotten. Rest here for a moment. Think of something you have given recently. What were you expecting in return? What would it feel like to release that expectation completely? Sit with this. And when you are ready, we will explore the fourth and final way of letting go. We have traveled far together. We have learned to throw away what we do not need to carry. We have discovered the freedom of wanting to be where we are. We have explored the joy of giving without grasping for return. Each of these methods works with a different aspect of our relationship to experience. The first addresses what we hold. The second addresses where we are. The third addresses how we give. The fourth way of letting go goes deeper still. It addresses the very nature of how experience moves through us. It asks, what if nothing stuck at all? This is the teaching of what might be called the Teflon mind, a mind to which nothing adheres, where experiences arise, are fully met, and then pass away without leaving residue, where even the happy moments are released, even the insights are let go, even the knowledge is held lightly. This may sound like a recipe for emptiness, for a life without meaning or depth. But it is actually the opposite. It is the path to meeting each moment completely, without the interference of all the moments that came before. There is an old story about a great teacher who lived many centuries ago. Each evening, he would take a walk through the mountains near his home. It was his practice, his way of ending the day. Sometimes, he would invite a student to accompany him. This was considered a great honor, for the teacher was wise and his time was precious. But there was one rule, absolute and non-negotiable. Whoever walked with the master must remain completely silent. Not a single word was permitted. One evening, a young man was chosen for this honor. He was earnest and devoted, eager to prove himself worthy. They set out together as the sun began its descent, walking along a ridge that offered expansive views of the surrounding valleys. As they walked, the sky began to change. The sun touched the horizon, and the clouds caught fire. Oranges and pinks and deep purples spread across the heavens. It was one of those sunsets that seems almost impossible, as if the sky itself were putting on a performance. The young man watched in wonder. He had never seen anything quite like it. The colors deepened, shifted, transformed moment by moment. His heart swelled with the beauty of it. And then, unable to contain himself, he spoke. "What a beautiful sunset," he whispered. Just 4 words, barely audible, but words nonetheless. The teacher stopped walking. He turned and looked at his student for a long moment. Then, without a word, he turned back and walked home alone. The young man was devastated. He knew he had broken the rule. He sought out a friend, another student, and begged him to intercede with the master. Surely it was a small transgression. Just 1 sentence. Just an expression of appreciation. Could the master not show some mercy? The friend agreed to ask. He approached the teacher and pleaded the young man's case. It was only 1 sentence, he said. He was moved by beauty. Is that not understandable? Can he not be forgiven? The teacher listened. Then he explained why he could not allow the young man to walk with him again. When he said, "What a beautiful sunset," the teacher said, he was no longer watching the sunset. He was only watching the words. Let this sink in for a moment. He was no longer watching the sunset. He was only watching the words. What the teacher pointed to is something we do constantly, usually without realizing it. We have an experience. Something beautiful, something painful, something interesting. And almost immediately, the mind begins to comment. It labels. It judges. It compares. It files the experience away in categories, connects it to memories, projects it into the future. And in doing all this, the mind separates us from the experience itself. You see a flower. Before you have fully seen it, the mind says, "flower." And now you are not seeing this particular flower with its specific colors and shapes and the way the light falls on its petals. You are seeing the concept, flower, which is an abstraction built from every flower you have ever encountered. You meet a person. Before you have truly met them, the mind says, "this kind of person." It categorizes based on appearance, on speech patterns, on 1,000 subtle cues. And now you are not meeting this unique human being. You are meeting your idea of them. You sit to meditate. An experience arises. Immediately the mind says, "good meditation," or bad meditation, progress or failure, I'm doing it right or I'm doing it wrong. And now you are not having the experience. You are having thoughts about the experience. This is what the teacher meant. The young man saw the sunset. But as soon as he spoke, as soon as he converted the experience into words, he was no longer seeing. He was only thinking about seeing. The words became a screen between him and reality. This happens not just with speech, but with all our mental commentary. The internal narration that runs almost constantly, describing and judging and interpreting everything that happens. We live inside this narration. We take it for reality. We do not realize that we are watching words instead of watching life. The Teflon mind does not cling to words. It does not cling to thoughts. It allows experience to arise and pass without the accumulation of commentary. It meets reality directly, without the screen. There is another story that illuminates this teaching from a different angle. A professor at a university heard about a new restaurant that had opened in his city. It was said to be exceptional, a place where the finest ingredients were prepared by master chefs, where every dish was a work of art. The waiting list was long, a testament to its reputation. The professor made a reservation. He waited the necessary weeks. When the day finally arrived, he dressed appropriately and made his way to the establishment. The restaurant was everything he had heard. Elegant without being ostentatious. Attentive service. An atmosphere of quiet refinement. He was shown to his table and made comfortable. Then the waiter appeared with the menu. It was a beautiful object in itself. Thick parchment, the kind that feels substantial in your hands. The dishes were described in flowing calligraphy, the words themselves seeming to dance on the page. Gold leaf accented the borders. Clearly, great care had been taken in its creation. The professor studied the menu carefully. He read each description. He appreciated the artistry of its presentation. He spent considerable time with it, examining every detail. Then he ate the menu. He consumed it carefully, page by page. When he was finished, he paid his bill and left. He never tasted the food. This story is absurd, of course. No one would actually eat a menu. The menu is not the meal. It is only a description of the meal, a set of words pointing towards something else entirely. And yet, this is precisely what we do with our lives. We consume descriptions instead of reality. We eat menus instead of meals. We study the words, the concepts, the maps, the theories, the explanations, and we mistake these for the thing itself. A person reads many books about love. They can discourse eloquently on its nature, its stages, its challenges. They know all the theories, and yet they have never truly loved. They have eaten the menu. A person studies meditation. They understand the techniques, the stages of development, the common obstacles. They can quote teachers and cite research, and yet they have never truly been present for a single breath. They have eaten the menu. A person learns about life. They accumulate knowledge, opinions, interpretations. They think they understand how things work, and yet they have never truly lived, never truly encountered reality directly, without the filter of all they think they know. They have eaten the menu. The Teflon mind does not accumulate menus. It does not mistake descriptions for reality. It holds knowledge lightly, using it when useful, but never letting it become a substitute for direct experience. There is a phrase worth remembering. It goes like this: never allow knowledge to stand in the way of truth. Knowledge is what you have learned. It is the accumulation of concepts, facts, interpretations, beliefs. It comes from books and teachers and experiences, filtered through your own understanding and stored in memory. Truth is what is actually happening right now, in this moment, before the mind has labeled it, categorized it, compared it to what it already knows. Knowledge is necessary for navigating the practical world. You need to know how to read, how to drive, how to do your work. You need concepts and categories to communicate with others. But knowledge can also become a prison. When you think you know what something is, you stop looking. When you have a concept for an experience, you stop experiencing. When you believe you understand a person, you stop meeting them fresh. The expert often sees less than the beginner. The expert knows what to expect. An expectation filters perception. The beginner does not know what to expect, and so they are open to whatever appears. This is why teachers sometimes say that the goal of practice is to return to beginner's mind. Not to become ignorant, but to become fresh. To set aside the accumulated knowing and meet each moment as if for the first time. The Teflon mind does this naturally. It does not allow knowledge to stick, to build up into a thick crust that separates it from reality. It learns, yes. It uses knowledge when needed, but it does not identify with knowledge. It does not mistake the map for the territory, and so it remains free. Free to see what is actually there. Free to meet each moment on its own terms. Free to be surprised by a reality that is always more interesting, more complex, more alive than any concept can capture. Let us explore a story that shows what becomes possible when we hold knowledge lightly. A young man from a Western country traveled to a remote region to study with a meditation teacher. He ended up staying for 9 years. The area where he lived had not been touched by Western influence. It was a traditional culture, following patterns that had existed for centuries. The young man, as a monk, was not treated as a visitor or an outsider. He was given a place in the social structure. He lived as the local people lived. He saw their ways from the inside, not as a tourist but as a participant. The monastery where he stayed served as a cremation ground for the surrounding villages. When someone died, the body was brought there. The monks performed the funeral rites. The cremation took place. The community came together to mark the passage. Over 9 years, the young man participated in many funerals. He saw the villagers come to mourn their dead. He watched them the day of the funeral, and he saw them in the days and weeks that followed as they went about their ordinary lives. And he noticed something that shocked him. There was no grief, not just an absence of dramatic wailing, which might be explained by cultural norms around emotional expression, but a genuine absence of the deep sadness that he had been taught was the natural, inevitable response to losing someone you love. The villagers came to the funerals. They participated in the rituals, and then they returned to their lives. There was no extended mourning, no depression, no struggling to process the loss. They simply continued, apparently at peace. At first, the young man thought he must be missing something. Perhaps they were suppressing their grief. Perhaps it would emerge later. Perhaps there were private expressions of sorrow that he was not witnessing. But 9 years is a long time. He saw the same people day after day. He knew them well, and he could find no evidence of hidden grief. It simply was not there. This contradicted everything he had been taught. In his culture, grief was considered natural and necessary. To lose someone you loved and not grieve was thought to be unhealthy, a sign of denial or emotional blockage. Entire industries existed to help people work through their grief. And yet, here was an entire culture where grief, as he understood it, did not exist. His knowledge said this was impossible. His direct experience showed him it was real. If he had allowed his knowledge to stand in the way of truth, he would have dismissed what he was seeing. He would have explained it away, reinterpreted it to fit his existing understanding. Many people do this when confronted with evidence that challenges their beliefs. But he held his knowledge lightly. He was willing to let his concepts be overturned by reality. And so he saw what was actually there, rather than what he expected to be there. What he learned from this experience changed his understanding of human nature. He realized that grief, as his culture practiced it, was not inevitable. It was, at least in part, constructed. The stories we tell about loss, the expectations we hold about how we should feel, these shape the experience itself. This does not mean grief is wrong or that we should try to suppress it. It simply means that what we take to be universal human nature is often more flexible than we assume. Our knowledge creates expectations, and expectations shape experience. The Teflon mind does not accumulate certainties about how things must be. It remains open to discovery. It allows reality to teach it, again and again, that the world is larger and stranger and more varied than any concept can contain. There is a subtlety to this teaching that must be addressed. When we speak of letting go, we usually think of releasing the painful things, the grudges, the regrets, the fears. And certainly, these need to be released. They are obvious sources of suffering. But the Teflon mind goes further. It releases everything, including the happy moments, including the peak experiences, including the insights and breakthroughs that we are tempted to cling to most tightly. Why would we let go of happiness? Because holding on to happy moments creates suffering in at least 2 ways. First, it creates comparison. If you had a wonderful experience yesterday and you hold on to it, then today is measured against it. Today, which might be perfectly fine on its own terms, now seems lesser. It does not live up to the memory of yesterday. And so you suffer, not because today is bad, but because you are comparing it to something that no longer exists. Second, it creates expectation. If you had a breakthrough in meditation last week and you hold on to it, then you come to practice expecting to repeat it. You are looking for something specific, and in looking, you miss whatever is actually happening. You are not present for this meditation. You are trying to recreate the last one. The Teflon mind lets even the good things pass, not by suppressing them or pretending they did not happen, but by fully experiencing them in the moment and then allowing them to go. Each moment is met fresh. Each experience is complete in itself. There is no accumulation, even of the positive. This might sound like a prescription for a flat, joyless existence. But the opposite is true. When you are not comparing this moment to past moments, you can receive it fully. When you are not expecting anything specific, you can be surprised by what appears. The person who holds nothing experiences everything more vividly, more completely, because they are actually here for it. Consider how many assumptions you carry through life. Ideas about how things are, what people are like, what you can expect from various situations. You assume you know your partner. You have been together for years. You have formed an idea of who they are, what they will say, how they will react. And you relate to this idea rather than to the actual person, who is changing moment by moment, who might surprise you if you were actually looking. You assume you know your enemies, the person who wronged you, the group you distrust, the category of people you have learned to fear. You have formed an idea of what they are like, and this idea prevents you from seeing any individual clearly. You see the concept, not the person. You assume you know yourself. You have a story about who you are, what you are capable of, what you want, what you fear, and you live inside this story, relating to yourself as a fixed thing rather than as an ever-changing process. You might be capable of far more than your story allows. You might be different than you think. The Teflon mind does not accumulate assumptions. It holds them lightly when they arise, useful for practical purposes, but never mistaken for truth. It remains curious. It keeps asking, what is actually here? What am I actually experiencing? This is not about having no thoughts. The mind will think. That is its nature. It is about not allowing thoughts to solidify into fixed beliefs that filter all subsequent perception. It is about keeping the mental channels clear so that reality can flow through without obstruction. How do you cultivate a Teflon mind? It begins with noticing when things stick. A thought arises. Watch what happens next. Does it pass through, leaving no trace? Or does it catch, generate more thoughts, create an internal conversation that loops and builds? An experience happens. Watch what happens next. Do you meet it, let it go, and remain available for the next moment? Or do you hold it, compare it, try to recreate it, or escape it? Knowledge is offered. Watch what happens next. Do you receive it lightly, using it when helpful, and setting it aside when not? Or do you grasp it, identify with it, let it become part of who you think you are? The more you notice sticking, the more you can choose differently. Not by forcing things to not stick, but by simply relaxing the grip. You see that you are holding, and in seeing, the holding loosens. Practice watching without commentary. This is perhaps the most direct training for the Teflon mind. Sit somewhere and simply observe what is happening. Sounds, sensations, sights. And when the commentary begins, when the mind starts to label and judge and compare, notice that. See that you have shifted from watching reality to watching words. Then return. Again and again. Each return is a letting go. Each return is a moment of freedom from the accumulated mental residue. Over time, the habit of accumulation begins to weaken. The mind becomes lighter, not empty of content, but free of the compulsive need to hold everything. Thoughts arise and pass. Experiences arise and pass. Knowledge is available when needed and transparent when not. And life becomes vivid. Surprisingly vivid. because you are finally seeing it directly, instead of through the thick filter of everything you thought you knew. There is a light way to remember this teaching. We have 2 ears, one on each side of the head, and if you look carefully, you might notice something. One ear is for things to come in. The other is for things to go out. Information arrives through one side. It passes through. It exits through the other side. Nothing needs to be kept. This is, of course, a playful image. Ears do not actually work this way, but the image points to something true about how the mind can function. Input can flow through without accumulating. Experience can arise and pass without leaving deposits. The channel can stay clear. In and out. Nothing needs to stick. The difficult thing someone said to you yesterday, let it come in one ear and out the other. The praise you received that made you feel special, let it come in one ear and out the other. The insight you had in meditation, let it come in one ear and out the other. The worry about tomorrow, let it come in one ear and out the other, not by suppressing or denying, but by meeting fully and then releasing completely, by having a mind to which nothing sticks. This is the 4th way of letting go. It is, in some ways, the simplest and the most profound. It asks nothing except that you stop collecting, stop accumulating, stop building the great edifice of the known, which separates you from the unknown that is always here, always fresh, always offering itself to be discovered. Let the sunset be the sunset. Let this moment be this moment. Let life be life, without the weight of all you think you know about it. Rest here for a moment. Notice what is arising in your mind right now. Thoughts about what you have heard, perhaps. Reactions, questions, insights. Can you let these pass through without holding on? Can you feel what it might be like to meet each moment clean, unburdened by all the moments before? And when you are ready, we will bring these teachings together. We have now explored all 4 ways of letting go. 4 doorways to the same freedom. 4 methods for releasing the grip that causes so much unnecessary suffering. The first way, throw it away. Recognize what you are carrying and consciously discard what does not serve you. The second way, want to be here. Transform any prison into paradise by choosing to be present for whatever is happening. The third way, give without grasping. Release expectations and find the joy that exists in offering itself. The fourth way, cultivate the Teflon mind. Let experiences arise and pass without accumulation, meeting each moment fresh. These are not separate techniques to be used in isolation. They are facets of one liberating orientation toward life. They support and reinforce each other. A person practicing one will naturally find themselves drawn into the others. But having explored them individually, it is worth asking, how do they come together? How do we actually live this way? Not just in moments of clarity, but in the ordinary texture of our days. This is the question of integration, and it begins with a recognition that may seem paradoxical at first. Letting go is not the only thing. There is a time to hold and a time to release. A time to engage fully with the responsibilities of life, and a time to set them down completely. A time to work hard and a time to rest. Wisdom lies not in always letting go, but in knowing when to hold and when to release. The problem for most of us is not that we do not know how to hold. We are very good at that. We have been trained since childhood in the arts of effort, responsibility, achievement, and accumulation. We know how to pick things up. We know how to carry them. We know how to keep going, even when we are tired. What we do not know is how to put things down. We do not know how to truly rest. Even when our bodies are still, our minds continue carrying. Even on vacation, we bring our worries with us. Even in sleep, we do not fully release. This is why the teaching of letting go is so essential. Not because it should replace engagement, but because it completes it. The full rhythm of a healthy life includes both: holding and releasing, effort and ease, carrying and resting. The 4 ways of letting go are tools for the releasing side of this rhythm. They are skills to be developed so that when it is time to rest, you can actually rest. When it is time to be at peace, peace is available. When you need to set something down, you know how. And paradoxically, this makes your engagement more effective. The person who can truly rest returns to work refreshed. The person who can truly let go picks up their responsibilities with renewed energy. Holding becomes lighter when you know you can release. As we integrate these teachings, it is worth addressing one of the most common obstacles to letting go. This is the voice in the mind that finds fault with everything. The voice that complains. You know this voice. It comments on everything that is wrong. The weather is too hot or too cold. The food is not quite right. The people around you are doing things incorrectly. The situation you find yourself in has flaws that need to be pointed out, if only to yourself. This voice seems like it is trying to help. It seems like it is identifying problems so they can be fixed. But watch it carefully, and you will notice something. It rarely leads to improvement. It simply runs, on and on, finding one fault after another, creating a constant background hum of dissatisfaction. Let us explore a small example. A teacher was giving a talk one evening when dogs began barking outside. They barked loudly and persistently, interrupting the flow of his words. Some people in the audience grew visibly annoyed. They shifted in their seats. They frowned toward the windows. Their minds were saying, "This should not be happening. Those dogs should be quiet. Someone should do something." The teacher paused, smiled, and said simply, "That is what dogs do. They bark." And he continued with his talk. This is such a small thing, but it contains a profound teaching. The dogs were going to bark whether anyone complained or not. The sound was what it was. The only question was whether to add mental suffering to the auditory experience. The complaining mind would argue endlessly with the dogs. It would wish they were different. It would construct scenarios of how they should be silenced. It would grow irritated and distracted, missing the teaching while it fought with reality. The mind that lets go simply notes, "Dogs bark. This is happening," and it returns attention to what matters. This applies to far more than dogs. That is what traffic does. It moves slowly sometimes. That is what weather does. It rains, it shines, it changes. That is what bodies do. They age, they ache, they have limitations. That is what people do. They behave in ways that are sometimes inconvenient or disappointing. You do not have to like these things. You do not have to pretend they are pleasant, but you can stop the useless argument with reality. You can throw the complaint away and return to life as it actually is. Here is another example, slightly more challenging. Picture a long flight. You are tired. You want to rest. And somewhere nearby, a baby begins to cry. Not just a brief fussing, but the full-throated wail of infant distress. It goes on and on. The parents are doing their best, but nothing seems to help. The sound fills the cabin, inescapable. What happens in your mind? For many people, the complaining voice activates immediately. This should not be happening. Why did they bring a baby on this flight? Can they not do something? When will it stop? And beneath the complaints, perhaps a fantasy arises. A wish that the situation could simply be eliminated. That the source of the disturbance could somehow disappear. A teacher once confessed, with characteristic honesty, that when faced with such a situation, a small part of him sometimes imagined opening the airplane door and tossing the baby out. He was joking, of course. He would never do such a thing. He was a person of deep compassion who would never harm anyone, let alone a child. But the joke points to something true about the mind. When we cannot control a situation, the mind sometimes generates absurd and even violent fantasies of elimination. This is the complaining mind taken to its extreme. The alternative is not to suppress the discomfort. The sound is genuinely unpleasant. The tiredness is real. But instead of throwing the baby out, you throw the complaint out. You let go of the argument with reality. You accept that this is happening, that you cannot change it, that your resistance is only adding suffering to an already difficult situation. And something shifts. The sound is still there, but the war with the sound has ended. There is just experience, neither good nor bad, simply what is happening in this moment on this flight. This is integration. This is taking the teaching off the cushion and into the messy reality of daily life. It is not always easy. Sometimes it takes practice and patience, but it is always possible. Let us explore how the teaching on expectations applies to the small moments. A teacher arrives to give a talk. He has been traveling, teaching, serving in various capacities. He is a little tired. A cup of tea would be welcome. After the talk, someone brings him tea. But it is not the tea he prefers. It is a different variety, perhaps not brewed quite right, not what he had in mind. Now, a person who has not practiced letting go might experience disappointment, a small irritation. The evening has been slightly marred by this minor deviation from expectation. But the teacher, who has spent decades practicing the art of release, simply notices, not the right tea, and then lets it go. It is such a small thing. And yet, small things accumulate. Small disappointments pile up. Small irritations build into chronic dissatisfaction. The person who cannot let go of the wrong tea cannot let go of anything. And the person who can let go of the wrong tea can let go of everything. This is why we practice with the small moments. Not because they matter in themselves, but because they train the mind. Each small release builds the capacity for larger release. Each time you let go of a minor expectation, you strengthen the muscle that will be needed when major challenges arise. So, practice with the tea. Practice with the traffic. Practice with the weather and the noise and the countless small ways that reality fails to match your preferences. And when the large things come, as they you will be ready. The teaching about the barking dogs extends to the people in our lives. Your partner has habits that irritate you. They leave things in the wrong place. They forget things you have told them. They respond in ways that are not quite what you hoped for. That is what this person does. That is who they are, at least in this moment. You can spend your energy wishing they were different, arguing internally with their nature, feeling constantly disappointed by the gap between who they are and who you want them to be. Or you can let go, not by abandoning the relationship, not by suppressing your genuine feelings, but by releasing the expectation that they should be other than they are, by accepting the actual person, rather than relating to your idea of who they should become. This is a profound form of love. To see someone clearly, with all their imperfections, and to be at peace with what you see. To stop the project of improvement and simply be present with another human being. The same applies to children, to friends, to colleagues, to the strangers you encounter in daily life. Each person is doing what that person does. Each one is behaving according to their nature, their conditioning, their current state of mind. You can fight this endlessly, or you can accept it and respond with wisdom. This does not mean you never set boundaries. It does not mean you accept mistreatment. It means you stop the internal war. You deal with situations as they are, not as you wish they were. And this clarity makes your responses far more effective. So how do we actually live this way? The answer is not through dramatic transformation, but through gentle, consistent practice. Each morning, take a moment to check your mind. What are you carrying into this day? Are there things from yesterday that do not need to come with you? Worries, resentments, the residue of difficult interactions. See if you can consciously set them down before the day begins. Throughout the day, notice when you leave presence. Notice when you stop wanting to be where you are. Notice when expectations arise and set you up for disappointment. Notice when the complaining voice activates, arguing with things that cannot be changed. Each noticing is an opportunity, not to judge yourself, but to practice, to throw something away, to choose to want to be here, to release an expectation, to let something pass through without sticking. Each evening, before sleep, review the day. Not with criticism, but with curiosity. Where did you hold too tightly? Where did you let go successfully? What can you learn that might help tomorrow? And then let the day go. Completely. Do not carry it into sleep. Do not let it build up in the backpack you will carry tomorrow. This rhythm of practice is not dramatic. It does not require retreats or special conditions. It is simply the steady, patient cultivation of a different way of being. Day by day, the habits of holding begin to weaken. Day by day, the capacity for release grows stronger. One more thing must be said. Be gentle with yourself. The habits of holding have been built over a lifetime. They will not dissolve overnight. You will catch yourself carrying things you do not need to carry. You will notice resistance to where you are. You will find expectations you did not know you had. You will feel things sticking that you wish would pass through. This is not failure. This is practice. Every time you notice holding, you have an opportunity to let go. Every moment of awareness is a moment of freedom, even if the letting go does not happen completely. Do not add another burden to your backpack by judging yourself for having burdens. Do not create suffering about your suffering. Simply notice again and again with patience and kindness, and keep practicing. The teacher who has spent decades in practice still notices holding, still catches expectations, still finds the complaining voice arising. The difference is not that these things have disappeared, but that they are met differently, with a kind of humor, with acceptance, with the confidence that comes from knowing that release is always possible, even if it does not happen right away. You are learning a skill. Skills take time. Be patient with yourself as you would be patient with a child learning to walk. Celebrate the small successes. Learn from the stumbles without making them into problems, and trust the process. The thousands of practitioners who have walked this path before you have found that it works. Not because they became perfect, but because they became free. Free enough to live with more peace, more joy, more presence. Free enough to be of genuine benefit to others. This freedom is available to you, not in some distant future, but now, in this moment. Each time you let go, you touch it. Each release is a taste of what becomes more and more natural with practice. Let us close this exploration by returning to where we began. There are 4 ways of letting go, 4 doors into the same room. The first door, throw it away. When you find yourself carrying what you do not need, set it down. The past cannot hold you unless you hold it. The future cannot frighten you unless you grasp it. You can release what does not serve you, anytime, anywhere. The second door, want to be here. When you find yourself imprisoned by circumstances you cannot change, change your relationship to them. Any place you do not want to be is a prison. Any place you want to be is freedom. The shift is internal, and it is always available. The third door, give without grasping. When you find yourself tangled in expectations and transactions, release your grip on outcomes. Give for the joy of giving. Offer without keeping score. Discover the freedom that comes when you need nothing in return. The fourth door, cultivate the Teflon mind. When you find yourself weighted down by accumulation, let things pass through. Do not mistake the menu for the meal. Do not let knowledge stand in the way of truth. Meet each moment fresh, unburdened by all the moments that came before. These doors are always open. You do not have to wait for special circumstances. You do not need anyone's permission. In any moment of your life, when you find yourself suffering from holding on, you can choose one of these doors and walk through. And on the other side, always, is freedom. Not a freedom from life, but a freedom within it. The freedom to be fully present. The freedom to meet whatever arises with peace and clarity. The freedom to love, to serve, to engage wholeheartedly without being crushed by the weight of your own grasping. This freedom is your birthright. It has been covered over by habits of holding, but it has never been destroyed. It is waiting for you, patient and unchanging, in every moment. All you have to do is let go. Rest here. Feel the weight of what you have been carrying. And feel, even now, the possibility of setting it down. The doors are open. You can walk through whenever you are ready. We have explored the 4 ways of letting go. We have considered how to integrate them into the rhythm of daily life. But there is a question we have not yet addressed directly. Why bother? This may seem like a strange question at this point. We have spoken of freedom, of peace, of the end of unnecessary suffering. These are surely reason enough. But let us go deeper. Let us explore what actually opens when a person begins to live this way. What becomes possible that was not possible before? What gifts arrive that cannot be received by hands that are always grasping? Because letting go is not just about ending suffering, though it does that. It is about making room. Room for something larger, something richer, something that cannot enter a life that is already full to overflowing with holding. Consider what happens in a relationship when you let go. You release your expectations of how your partner should be. You stop the internal argument with their nature. You accept them, in this moment, as they actually are. What opens? Space. Space that was previously occupied by disappointment and frustration. Space that was filled with the effort of trying to change someone. Space that was taken up by the gap between who they are and who you wanted them to be. And into that space, something can enter that could not enter before. Actual love. Not the love that is really a transaction. Not the love that is conditional on the other person meeting your requirements, but love that simply sees and accepts and delights in what is there. This is a different kind of love than most people know. It does not grasp. It does not demand. It does not keep score. It simply appreciates. It enjoys. It celebrates the existence of another being, without needing them to be anything other than what they are. People who are loved this way can feel it. They may not be able to name what is different, but they sense that they are being met without agenda. They relax. They open. They become more fully themselves because they are not being pushed to become someone else. This is one of the great gifts of release, the capacity to love without condition, to be present for another person without the filter of expectation, to offer the greatest gift one human can offer another, which is simply to see them clearly and to let them be. There is a particular kind of holding that blocks creativity. It is the holding of outcome, the grasping for result. A person sits down to write, to paint, to compose, and they want it to be good. They want it to succeed. They want it to be received well, to be praised, to achieve something. And this wanting tightens them. It creates a kind of constriction, a narrowing of possibility. They are not free to follow where the work wants to go. They are steering it toward where they think it should end up. The work that emerges from this place is often competent, but lifeless. It meets expectations because it was created within expectations. It surprises no one because it was not allowed to surprise even its creator. Now consider what happens when you let go. You sit down to create, and you release your grip on outcome. You do not know what will emerge. You do not need it to be anything in particular. You are simply present, available, curious about what wants to come through. And something opens. The constriction eases. The narrow channel becomes a wide river. Ideas arrive that you could never have planned. The work takes on a life of its own, going places you would never have thought to take it. This is the creativity that emerges from release. It is not forced. It is not manufactured. It is received. And it has a quality of aliveness, of freshness, that people can feel. They sense that something real has happened, something that could not have been predicted or controlled. Every artist knows this experience, at least in glimpses. The moments when the work flows, when the creator gets out of the way, when something larger seems to be moving through. These moments are moments of letting go. And the more you practice release in all areas of life, the more available these moments become. There is a common misunderstanding about letting go. People sometimes think it leads to passivity. If you release expectations, if you stop grasping for outcomes, will you not become inactive? Will you not lose the motivation to do anything at all? The opposite is true. Consider what holds people back from action. Often it is fear. Fear of failure. Fear of looking foolish. Fear of loss. They can see what needs to be done, but they cannot bring themselves to do it because they are too attached to outcomes they cannot control. The person who has practiced letting go still sees what needs to be done, but they are not paralyzed by fear of results. They can act fully and wholeheartedly without the weight of grasping dragging at them. They can take risks that others cannot take because they are not holding so tightly to what they might lose. This is a different kind of courage than the courage that grits its teeth and forces itself forward despite fear. That kind of courage is exhausting. It burns out. It cannot be sustained. The courage that comes from letting go is easeful. It does not fight against fear, but simply does not feed it. It acts from clarity rather than from struggle. It moves forward not because it has overcome resistance, but because there is less resistance to overcome. People who live this way can accomplish remarkable things. Not because they are more talented or more driven than others, but because they are lighter. They are not carrying the weight of their own fear. They can respond to what life asks of them without the friction of self-protection. Here is one of the most profound gifts of release: the capacity to be present for suffering, your own and others, without being destroyed by it. Most people cannot do this. When they encounter pain, their own or someone else's, they contract. They pull away. They try to fix it, change it, escape it, deny it. They cannot simply be with it. This is understandable. Suffering is difficult. The instinct to avoid it is natural. But the inability to be present for suffering creates its own kind of suffering. It isolates us from ourselves and from each other. It leaves those who are in pain alone because others cannot bear to be close to them. The person who has practiced letting go develops a different relationship with suffering. They can be present for it, not because they enjoy it, not because they seek it out, but because they are not fighting it so hard. When their own pain arises, they can meet it. They do not add layers of resistance. They do not make it worse by arguing with it. They simply allow it to be what it is, and in that allowing, it often moves through more quickly and completely. When others are suffering, they can be there. They can sit with someone in grief without trying to fix it. They can witness pain without needing to make it go away. They offer the gift of presence, which is often what suffering people most need. There is a teacher who visits hospitals, who sits with the dying. People sometimes ask how he can bear it. How can he enter that much pain, day after day, without being overwhelmed? The answer is letting go. He does not hold on to the suffering he encounters. He is fully present for it, in the moment, and then he lets it pass through. It does not accumulate in him. he does not carry it home. This is compassion made sustainable. The capacity to be with suffering, again and again, without burning out. It is one of the most precious gifts a human being can develop, and it is a direct fruit of the practice of release. There is a quality that some people have that is difficult to name. They walk into a room and something shifts. The atmosphere lightens. People feel better for being around them. This quality is not about personality. It is not about being entertaining or charismatic. It is something subtler, something deeper. It is the quality of a person who is not carrying very much. Their backpack is light. They are not weighed down by resentments, fears, expectations, the accumulated sediment of years of holding. They move through life with ease, and that ease is contagious. Being around such a person gives you permission to let go of your own weight, not through anything they say or do, but simply through their presence. You sense that another way of being is possible. You feel it demonstrated in front of you. This is one of the ways that the practice of letting go benefits not just the practitioner, but everyone around them. You become a kind of medicine for the world. Not by fixing anyone, not by teaching anything, just by being someone who has set down what did not need to be carried. Children are often like this. Before the world teaches them to hold on, they move with a natural lightness. They are fully present, fully engaged, and then they let go completely. They cry, and then they laugh. They fall, and then they get up. They do not accumulate the way adults do. The practice of letting go is, in a sense, a return to this natural lightness. Not the naivety of childhood, but the wisdom of having learned to set down what you have picked up. The freedom of someone who has carried enough and knows it is no longer necessary. We must speak of death, not because it is morbid, but because the relationship with death reveals so much about how a person holds on. Most people fear death. They do not like to think about it. When it comes close, through illness or loss, they contract with dread. They fight against the inevitable. They make their final days a battle rather than a transition. This fear is understandable. Death is the ultimate letting go. Everything you have held will be released. Everything you have accumulated will be left behind. Every attachment will be severed. For a person who has not practiced letting go, this is terrifying. The mind that has spent a lifetime grasping cannot imagine release. The hands that have never opened cannot conceive of opening completely. But for a person who has practiced, death wears a different face. They have let go many times. They have released the past, the future, expectations, resentments, the need to control. Each release has been a small death, and each has shown them that they can survive it. That something remains after letting go. That freedom waits on the other side. When death approaches, such a person can meet it differently. Not with enthusiasm, necessarily. Not without some fear. But with a familiarity, with a kind of trust in the process of release. There is a story of a meditation master who was dying. His students gathered around him, grief-stricken, and asked if he was afraid. He smiled and said, "I have been practicing for this moment my whole life." This is what the practice prepares you for. Not just the daily releases, though those are valuable, but the final release, the moment when everything is let go at once. Those who have practiced meet that moment with grace. They do not cling. They do not fight. They open their hands and let go of life as they have let go of so many smaller things. And in that release, something peaceful happens. Something that those who witness it never forget. We have spoken of peace, of freedom, of the end of suffering. But there is something more that the practice of letting go often brings. Something unexpected. Joy. Not happiness that depends on circumstances. Not pleasure that requires things to go a certain way. But a bubbling up of delight that seems to come from nowhere and require nothing. This joy surprises people who have been practicing. They did not set out to find joy. They set out to end suffering, to find peace, to live more freely. But joy arrives as an uninvited guest and makes itself at home. Why does this happen? Perhaps it is because joy is natural. It is the default state when nothing is blocking it. When you stop holding so tightly, when you release the weight of grasping and fearing and resisting, what remains is a kind of quiet happiness. Not ecstatic, not giddy, but a steady warmth. An appreciation for being alive. A delight in the simple fact of existence. This joy is not dependent on anything. It does not require special experiences or fortunate circumstances. It is available in ordinary moments, in mundane activities, in the midst of difficulty. It is the joy of a mind that is not fighting with reality, of a heart that is not clenched in protection. People who experience this joy often feel surprised by its simplicity. They may have spent years seeking happiness through acquisition, through achievement, through getting life to cooperate with their preferences. And now they discover that happiness was available all along. It was simply covered over by all the holding. This is perhaps the most beautiful gift of letting go. Not just the absence of suffering, but the presence of joy. A joy that does not depend on anything and therefore cannot be taken away. A joy that is always available to anyone willing to open their hands and release what they have been clutching so tightly. We began this exploration by noting that learning to let go is an act of compassion. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who shares your life. Let us return to that theme as we near the end. When you practice letting go, you change. And when you change, everything around you shifts in response. Your relationships improve because you are no longer bringing so much unexamined expectation and resentment to them. Your work improves because you are no longer so tight with fear and grasping. Your presence improves because you are actually here, not lost in the past or the future. And all of this affects others. Your family, your friends, your colleagues, even strangers you encounter briefly. They receive a different version of you, a lighter version, a more present version, a version that can actually see them and meet them. This is how the practice spreads. Not through teaching, necessarily. Not through convincing anyone. Just through being different. Through demonstrating in your own life that another way is possible. Children learn from it without being taught. Partners feel it without being told. The ripples move outward, touching lives you may never know you have touched. There is a story of a teacher who was asked how he could possibly help the whole world. There is so much suffering, so many people. How could one person make any difference? He said, I take care of my own mind. I practice letting go. And then I trust the ripples. This is what you are doing when you practice. You are not just freeing yourself. You are becoming a source of freedom for others. A demonstration that the weight can be set down. a proof that peace is possible. The world needs this. It needs people who have learned to let go, people who are not adding to the collective burden of fear and resentment and grasping, people who carry lightness with them wherever they go. You can become one of these people, not through perfection, but through practice. Not by arriving at some final state of enlightenment, but by taking the next step and the next, releasing as you go. The path is open, the practice is available, and the gifts are waiting for anyone who is willing to receive them. Rest here for a moment. Allow yourself to feel what might be possible, not as a distant goal, but as something beginning to open, right now, in this very moment. The gifts of release are not reserved for saints or masters. They are your birthright. They have been waiting for you all along. We have come to the end of this journey together, but in another sense, the journey is only beginning. Knowing these teachings and living them are different things. The words you have heard are like seeds. They have been planted, but seeds require tending. They need the water of practice, the sunlight of attention, the patience of time. Do not expect perfection from yourself. Do not imagine that you will hear these teachings once and be transformed forever. The habits of holding have been built over decades. They are woven into the very fabric of how you experience life. They will not dissolve simply because you now know they are optional. But something has shifted. Something has opened. You have seen that another way is possible. You have been given 4 doors, and you know now that they exist. Even when you forget, even when you fall back into old patterns, some part of you will remember. And remembering, you can begin again. This is how freedom grows. Not in dramatic leaps, but in small, repeated choices. Each time you throw something away that you do not need. Each time you choose to want to be where you are. Each time you give without grasping for return. Each time you let an experience pass through without sticking. Each of these moments is a step toward the life that is waiting for you on the other side of your holding. Be kind to yourself on this path. Be patient with your struggles. And be confident in the possibility that brought you here. The same longing for freedom that led you to listen is the force that will carry you forward. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.